Okay, so now that I've got my area plan, I want to use massing to do something very similar. So for this assignment, you only need to do fairly simple massing diagrams. And so you can see the examples here where essentially I've got extruded shapes which are building on the two-dimensional area plans that we've got up here at the top. And so in this case, it does give a little bit more detail in the vertical plane, which you obviously can't get from the area plans. So that's a really good use for massing. But also I just want to introduce you to massing if you haven't used it very much. It's a really powerful tool. And so just to give you an idea how far you can take it, these are some examples of things that you can do with massing in Revit that would be next to impossible with the normal modelling tools that you have all used. So it's a really powerful modelling system. But again, for this assignment, you don't need to take it that far. And it's often good to start simple and just get used to the tool before you try and push it a bit further if you want to try out some of these more complicated things. So, to use massing, we've got a couple of options. They are a family. So, if you go to the Massing and Site tab, you can see the option there to make an in-place mass. And that's the option I'll use. The other option, though, is to place a mass, which you can do if you've made a separate mass family. And to do that, you go to the main menu and go to New and then Conceptual Mass. And that makes a separate family file, just like a regular family if you make that as a separate file. But I'm not going to do that. Again, I'm going to make an in-place mass. So it's a bit like using model in place. Same idea, basically. So again, under Massing in Site, I'll go to In-Place Mass. And I suppose I'll save the project while I'm doing that. And you'll get this option there. Well, it's not really an option, it's just a message telling you that Show Mass will be enabled. So there's a special view control for massing, and I'll come back to that, but just know for now it's being enabled automatically. You don't have a choice. So I'm going to click Close there, and now it'll ask me for the name. So I'll call this Analysis Mass. So I'll start by doing some fairly simple massing using the areas that I've already drawn. And so you can see on the Create tab, you've got options to make shapes similar to a lot of the other modelling tools. So I'm going to start with a rectangle. And then before I draw anything though, I'm going to check the options there on the ribbon. You can see it's got the option selected to draw on face. I'm going to change that straight away to draw on work plane. And then you can see there we've got the option for the placement plane. I'm going to make sure that's on the ground floor. And then I'll simply draw a rectangle over this, maybe over this meeting room. It's a nice simple one. Okay, so now it's a bit hard to see that because my boundary lines are covering it. So I might just change to a different view. I'll go back to the original ground floor just so that you can see the lines that I've made a little bit more clearly. So I just want to show you there a little bit about the way lines work in a mass family as opposed to any other family really in Revit. You can see if I go to select any of those lines, that it comes up with the whole rectangle. So that's different already. If you remember, when you go to draw lines to make an extrusion, and then if you go to select those lines, they'll be separate lines. But here they're connected. So what do you do if you want to select just one line? Well, an easy way is to select the shape first and then click on one of the lines. And that works. So you can see that I've got just one line selected now. So that option usually works. But I'm going to go back and just click to the outside so that nothing's selected, then I'll go to select that rectangle again. And now I want to make that into a mass or a 3D volume. So all of the modelling with massing is done with one tool. It's done with this Create Form tool. So you don't have all of the different modelling tools. You don't have extrusion, sweep, blend, or swept blend, or revolve. You just have Create Form. And it does all of those things and a lot more. So you just need to know how to use it. So again, I've got my rectangle selected, and it's important that it's all 4 lines, so it's a closed shape. And I'm going to click Create Form, and now that's a 3D mass. But I can't see it because I'm in a plan view. So I'm going to go now and make a 3D view just for massing. So I've got my 3D view there already, and if I zoom in and go to wireframe, I could probably find that mass. But like I said, I want to make a view for massing, but I can't, because if I go to duplicate this view, you can see that that option's greyed out. So I'm going to just finish my mass temporarily, finish mass, and now I can duplicate the view. So I'm going to right click on the view as normal, duplicate view, duplicate, and then I'll rename that new view with a better name, so I'm going to call that 3D massing. Okay, so then I might select one of my walls and then just right click, hide in view category, and then the same with the roofs. I'll just hide the category of those, and well, I'll leave the floors for now. So you can see there's my mass that I've modelled. So I'm going to select that now, and I can go back to creating and editing my mass family by going to Edit in Place. So, by making a rectangle and then using Create Form, it's given me an extrusion. So that's the most basic type of modelling with massing, and that probably is all you'll need for most of the massing for this assignment. So if I go back to my area plan, I can draw another one. So back to Create tab, and I'll click on Rectangle again, leaving it on Draw on Work Plane. This time I'm going to change the placement plane to lower ground. And then I'll draw a rectangle over the amenities block. And then you can see it's giving me this message telling me that none of the elements are visible in this view. Any idea why? So when you see that message, you should be thinking about view settings. The reason it can't see it is because of the settings in this view. That message is telling you the object's been made, usually just fine, but we can't see it, that's all. So before I go too far, I'm going to now just change in properties to the view properties, which you can always do using this option here. I can go to my area plan option to bring up the properties, and then now I'll go down to view range, and I'll change the bottom to unlimited and the view depth as well to unlimited. Click OK, and now it's hard to see, but it is there. If I go to select that, you can see there is my rectangle. So I can select that and again use Create Form to make that a 3D volume. So it's extruded it, but now I'll show you now maybe a bit more about the what's happening in the vertical plane. If I go to that 3D massing view, you can see at the moment it's got the same height as the other one. So you might be thinking, how do you set the height of these things when you're making your extrusions? And the answer is you don't usually worry about the height until after you've made it. So click Create Form, and then you can easily, with that top surface selected, find the dimension that will come up and change the height that way. You can also just select the top surface and stretch it. So that's actually good practice, because when you go to select these volumes, you'll see that they have different elements. So it's a bit like a curtain wall or something like that has a few different components. And again, you've got a few options that are very similar to 3ds Max. So if I go onto the edge there and click, you can see it comes up with that XYZ gizmo. But I don't want that edge, I want the top surface. If I move the cursor around, I'll be able to get it. Or maybe not. Yep, there it is. But if you're having trouble, you can always use tab. So if I go to the edge there, you can see that's selecting that edge on the top left. I don't want that, so instead I'll keep my cursor there on the edge and then press tab. That's giving me the whole box. I don't want that either. So I'll press tab again. That's giving me the side on the top left, I suppose. I don't want that either. So tab again, and now I get the top. So there's one more element that I haven't shown you yet. You've got the edges, the whole element, and then the sides. But then another element that you get with massing that you don't get with other things in Revit is the vertex on each corner. So you can see there using tab, I can go through, so that's an edge, that's the top, that's another edge, that's another edge, that's another edge, back to another side, there we go, so now that's the vertex. So I can click now and that's going to give me the corner. And you can do different things with those. So here you can see I can move that vertex and get a deformed shape that would be very difficult with any of the other modelling tools in Revit. You could probably get something very similar with a blend if you make it with a vertical plane, but again, much easier with massing. So I don't want that though. I just want to start by maybe changing the height. So you can either stretch using the arrows. And do you remember what the colours mean from 3ds Max? Exactly. So RGB is XYZ. So it's easy to remember because it's in the same order as your primary colours. So red, green and blue are your primary colours. Don't believe anyone who tells you it's red, yellow, blue. Red, green, blue. And then red, green, blue in most 3D programs means XYZ. In that order. So red is X, green is Y, blue is Z. So if I select again the top surface, I can click and drag on that blue arrow and I know it's moving vertically. If I go on the red arrow, that's going to slide it left or right, which could be interesting, but then the Y is the green arrow, and again we can slide it the other way. So it's almost like a random cool house sort of thing. Right, so you can do fairly interesting things just by deforming the geometry a little bit. And if you're interested in deconstructivist design, a lot of that came from the new geometry movements that preceded them. And that's exactly how they made their geometry, starting with classical geometry and then just deforming it a little bit, not doing completely off the chart things that you might get by sketching or. Oh yes, of course. Yeah, so you can make walls and floors and roofs from the massing. Yeah, that's the other great thing about it. So, yes, I might show you that in a minute. So I'm going to undo this though and go back to my original box shape. So before I do too much, I want to get this to tie in with the heights that I've modelled already in my levels. So I'm going to go to the section view there, and I can see the massing there as well. So I can start here by getting the top. And so here you can see straight away that I can pick that edge or that line there, but it's telling me it's an edge. Now I don't want that because I want the whole surface. If I just grab the edge and bring that down, you can see that it's now sloping. It's a bit hard to tell, but we've obviously got this up here, so that's right. It's going to be... Now I do want something like that, but not right away. So back to the section view. So remember, to get that whole top surface, you have to be careful here. You don't want the edge, so tab. Don't want the front surface either, or that's actually the whole element. I want the top, so now it's telling me it's a surface, which is that plane on the top of the box. And then this is my level 1 level, so I'm going to click and drag just to snap that onto the level. That will probably be okay for analysis drawings. If you want to, you could leave a gap for your floor. If you're thinking you might use this for modelling, then you could bring this down and then you'll get a dimension to the level. And you can type in a set out there, so maybe 200 or something, to allow for the floor thickness. So then, if I go to the 3D view for massing, now I could maybe look at doing something more interesting. So I might want a sloping wall here. And maybe we can have it sloping in a couple of different directions. Oh yes, you can add more in. Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to put more detail in, yep. So a good option there, if you want to start putting or refining that geometry, is this X-ray option. So that shows those elements a bit more clearly, so you can see all the different vertex points on the corners. And then you've got a couple of options. You've got add edge and add profile. They work a bit differently. So add edge lets you draw in new edges, and you can do them usually in the same direction as the extrusion. You can draw them in directly as well, so you can always go from a point to a point. So here you can go across diagonally as well, and that does work. But otherwise, again, add edge usually is best for going in that vertical direction. Add profile goes the other way, so that's taking the original rectangle and adding in more profiles, which can be interesting as well. So then now I've got these vertex points, and again we get the same gizmo, so I can bring those in. You can see there, get something a bit more interesting. You've got to be careful though, once you get curves, the geometry is going to get a lot more complicated, and you need to think about how walls might work with that. So just have a good think about whether you want that. So I might not go for any curves. Curves in this sort of geometry make it much harder to build, and means it's harder to design usually, and harder for you to make other things. So again here, once I've got that profile, it's a bit harder to work with, so I might undo back a couple of steps, and again try to keep the geometry as simple as I can while still getting maybe some interesting forms that are going to tie in with the design I want. So I can still select this edge here, and I'm going to move it back. But notice how now I've got this orange arrow coming up. And I'll just maybe select something else. I'll get the surface now that is on the side that's sloping using tab. And, oh, sorry, that's not the right one. It will give it to me eventually. There it is. Okay, so notice how with this one, I've got two orange arrows. So those orange arrows can still be used to adjust the surface, but what they're showing is the axis from the plane of that surface. So it's a bit hard to see there, but this one especially you can see has the same angle as that surface. And that can be useful, but it's often not what you want, and you want to go back to just straight X, Y, Z. To do that, there's a shortcut, spacebar. And that makes them, again, RGB, red, green, blue, which means they mean X, Y, Z. So space toggles between those two options. So here maybe I'll get a vertex point, and you'll see again I've got this orange arrow, which is in line with that axis. Also the axis is coming from that edge. Again with space now, you'll see it'll change to x-axis.
Why are you changing? Why are they coming orange?
Because the angle of the edge has changed.
Okay, but why do we make space to make them in the right?
Well, here, so that you can see that orange arrow is coming from this angle. So now if I press space, the X is parallel. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Right angles. That's right. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah. So now, if I deselect it, you can see it's still in X-ray mode. So to turn X-ray mode off, you simply need to select any part of that shape, whether it's an edge or a vertex or a surface, it doesn't matter, then you can turn X-ray off. Okay, so now I might go back to my section view and I can do the same thing with the part at the back. So using tab again to make sure I've got the surface on the top, I can then stretch that down to that mezzanine level and then again maybe get a set out from there. So I might want to do something more with that. I'll go back to my area plan. Okay, so now I might want to cut something out of this, just to do something a bit more interesting. So back to create, and then I'll make, just as an example, even though it doesn't really make sense for the design, I'm going to make a circle, just to show you something different. And then again, checking the options here, I'm going to change or check that the plane is still set to lower ground. And I'll just draw my circle. And I might do the rest in my 3D view. So you can also make void forms. So if I select this and then under create form, instead of solid form, I'm going to choose void form. So it's going to extrude that, and you can see it's automatically taking away from the mass. And just like before, I can stretch that. I can slope it as well to get something different. So now to go back to the original void, you can see that I'm just going to the edge that the void is creating. So any edge there, whether it's inside there at the bottom or the top, or these side parts, they're all being made by the void. So if I move the cursor there, then I can use tab and just keep pressing until I get the void highlighted. Now I can select that. And so here sometimes it's helpful to make this X-ray mode, so you can see things a bit more clearly. And then again I can use tab to get the different parts. So here maybe I'll just get that, see if I can get that vertex there on the top. There we are. And we can maybe look at some different options there. Maybe it's not high enough, so I'll go back to selecting first the void and then go to the edge of that void and then tab again to get the top. So it's a two-step process. Sometimes when you've got objects combined together with a void or something like that, you need to tab to select that object first, then sometimes use tab again to get the sub-elements within that. So I can adjust the height there, for example. So those are all extrusions though. Maybe just to show you a little bit more about the way this massing works. It probably isn't essential for the work you need to do here, because you can see if it's just block forms like this, you can make them all with extrusions. But you may want to do something a bit more involved. So a good example maybe is a revolve. So to do a revolve with a mass, I might go to the section view and I'll make a profile here. So I'm going to just use the line tool, and you can see that it's asking me now for a plane, and this is normal when you're drawing in section or elevation in a project. Now I haven't defined a plane. You might find it's easier if you do that, but I can pick a plane here, click OK, and I'm going to choose the back wall. So here again, tab is your best friend. So if I get the surface of the wall there, should highlight it. Well, that's good enough. You can see there it's showing me a rectangle, which is the shape of that wall in elevation. I might just use tab again though, and you can see that that's showing me the surface of the wall. And they're slightly different. The first one was the reference plane, or the reference in the middle of the wall, the centre line essentially. This one is the surface of the wall on the inside. Okay, so that's the first thing. And then now I'm just going to draw some, a profile. So this is going to be a sort of a bird cage type thing, if that makes sense. And yeah, something will go over the level, across a few levels. So I'm going to draw maybe just something that's a little bit interesting on one side. Yeah, that's right, it's vertical, so it's almost like a column, but it's hopefully something that's big enough to have some usable space inside. So there we go, that might be about the size. Okay, I might just bring this over. Oh, actually that'll be right, because I'll use a void on the other side. So that's the profile that I want to rotate. So now I'm going to make a line, another line for my axis. So I'm just going to draw this above. And that's it. So I've got a closed shape, that's my profile, and I've got an open shape, that's my line. And I'm going to select both of those with a window, and then click Create Form. It knows to make it a revolve because of the things I picked. So again, if you draw an open shape like that, just a line, usually, it'll use that as an axis automatically. It knows. Okay, so it takes a bit of practice, and you'll work out the ways of making.
360 will.
Yeah, yep. I'll show you the angle setting in a. Yep, that's good actually. Yep. So now that was not. I want that to be bigger, so it wasn't wide enough. So I've done an undo to go back, and now I'm going to use that method that I mentioned before to select the inner edge. I'm going to select the shape first, and then click on the inside again. So I've got just that edge selected. Now I'm going to select this line at the top with Control, and I'm just going to use the left arrow on the keyboard to nudge those across. I want it to be a bit bigger. So now again, select the shape. Notice again how it's connected. That's really important when you're making shapes for massing. And then again, the line with Control, Create Form, we've got a solid. Oh, it's a circle. Yeah, so I'll show you this in 3D. So it's a revolved shape.
I know you make the surface and after that it's going to 360.
Yeah.
But from the top you make line just now.
Yeah.
You make circle.
No, it's a line. It's a line. Yeah.
Yeah, but
But
when
shouldn't
it
be
goes.
circle to go from
That's the axis. So it's like the hinge that it's
the
spinning.
axis and
Yeah.
it's already gonna go
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now the angle is a property of the element. So if I go to click, it'll only select part of it. But if I use Tab, I can highlight the whole thing. And you can see over here in properties, it's got the start angle 0, end angle is 360. So I'll change it to 180 just so that you can see.
It will be half.
Yeah. So if you wanted to go on the inside, that would be starting at 180 and finishing at 360. So that's okay. But I also want this to be cut on this side so it doesn't go outside the building. So I can easily still make a void now and combine a solid and a void. So back to ground floor, and I will just make a new rectangle and check the plane, so that's right, and just draw a rectangle starting on the edge of the building, also the edge of the wall. And then again select the rectangle, click Create Form, And now going to my 3D view, notice I didn't go to solid deliberately, because I just want to show you how you can change it into a void afterwards. So I wanted it to be a solid so that I could easily modify it in the 3D view there, so that it's got the right height. And now again using tab to select the element. In properties, it's a really good option. You can change most solids into voids afterwards, which is really handy because they're easier to work with while they're solids. Then you can change it to a void.
But you only do this in maths.
No, with normal solids that works as well.
Oh, really?
Yep. So you can see there, I had it deep enough at the bottom, but at the top it's not. So I'm going to go back and modify that void, no problem. Using tab, just like before. And now using tab again to get the front of that box, I can then just stretch it with the Y direction axis. And there we go. Okay, so that is probably more complicated than you'll need because you're just doing fairly simple conceptual diagrams at this stage, hopefully, but it could help you to know some of those different modelling options. So what I'll just show you to finish off then is how to make this into built form rather than these abstract things. So I'm going to finish the maths and I'm going to go back to my original 3D view. I'll duplicate that again. Rename, and we'll call this 3D modelling. So I might use a section box to cut away most of these things. Right, so I can just see the building and the bit of ground underneath it. And then I can, just like before, maybe hide the roof by category. But I might just hide the walls then by element. So when you select them, you can, of course, right click and just choose hide in view elements instead of category. So I can keep some of the walls there. And then I might hide my section box as well. Hide in view elements. Alright, so then just to finish off with massing, before I show you how to change the colours, just to give you a better idea about modelling. You can make walls from a mass, which is a really handy option. So with the wall tool there, I can pick any of these planes or these surfaces. And it makes those into a wall, so that's a nice sloping wall that would be hard to make in other ways. So they're solid walls because I've chosen that or left it on that basic wall type. You can choose curtain walls, but you can see there in some cases they won't be compatible. Usually with sloping walls, these basic curtain wall types won't work. They do actually work in some cases, but not always. So you can see here it's telling me it's incompatible. So the other option is to use curtain system. So then if I choose curtain system now, again I can pick that surface and then you just need to click create system to finish it. So let's put curtain panels there, oops, and they can be given mullions and other things. So I'll just get that and I can go in here and just choose to have, let's go for one of the basic ones, mullions there. Right, so that's a way of making, again, sloping or unusual shapes for your curtain systems and curtain walls and other walls as well. Then the other option is to use floor plates to create floors. So when you select any mass family, you get this option, mass floors. And that's going to pick up the levels that you've made. So I'm just going to choose level 1 there. Click OK. And you can see now that it's cut a plane through this object here. Now the others haven't because they weren't high enough. So what I might do is just make another one. So I'm going to go back to select my mass, and I'll make, again with edit in place, another rectangle, and just make that a bigger, volume, just so it's a bit clearer. So I'm just going to make a rectangle down here, nice and simple, and finish it. And check that in my 3D view. Oops, sorry, this one. Okay, and I didn't turn it into 3D, so that's good for you to see. So you can see I've made this rectangle, but where is it? So I'm going to select it, edit in place, and you'll see it's actually down below the ground. Yeah, and well, partly, yeah, that I didn't make form, and also I didn't check the level. But that's okay, it's good for you to see this. So I can change that now to ground floor, and then I can see that now sitting on the right level. And then, like I say, create form. That'll make it into solid. And I'm going to stretch that up so that it goes through to a higher level. And now I'll finish it again. And you can see much more clearly with this one that I've got this floor plate that's been added.
That is because of the level that we have?
Yeah, because I used that mass floors to make it, and that picks up the level. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, so when you choose it, it'll just show you the levels, and you just pick the levels that you want. So if I choose mezzanine as well, it'll cut another one through, down lower. So say if I go back now to edit in place, and I change again the angle of this, let's go back and then bring this one out maybe. So yes, I might be going for a sloping sort of thing here, which could be interesting. Okay, bring this back a bit. Actually, I'll undo that and I'll just do that again. So, there we are. Right, so you can do some really interesting things. So as well as modelling conceptually like you do in the area plans for 2D drawing, this can give you lots of options when you're working in 3D. And so, now if I finish the mass again, you can see that my floor plates get adjusted. Right, but it's important to realise these are all still conceptual objects. So, back on the Massing and Site tab, before I put the floors in, I'm just going to show you this option here that I mentioned is turned on automatically. The first button there. It's a bit tricky if you go to the options down below. So usually the best option is just to click on the top half, and that toggles it on and off. So it's a special view control just for massing, which is really useful because often you just want to turn the massing off, so you can only see the physical built objects. But you can easily bring it back with this one. So now if I go to floors by face under Massing and Site, I can choose either of those plates. You don't have to choose them all. So I'll just choose this one, make sure I've got the floor type I want, and then create floor. So now back on Massing and Site, I can toggle the massing off and just see the floors. Right, so you can use it to generate lots of interesting geometry and then easily get rid of it once you're done with it. So the final thing is then for the assignment especially how to get the colours. It's fairly easy. You just need to, like you will with any in-place family, select it and then go to edit in place. And that's the thing, if you're having trouble setting materials to things you've done with model in place, it's usually the same as this. So you can see there if I select it, there's no material coming up in properties. You need to go to edit in place, then select the whole element, and then you get the material, colour or option over here. So I'm going to browse there and find one of the mass materials. Right, so massing, it's called default. There we are. So you've got default mass floor, default mass exterior wall, default mass opening, default mass interior wall. They're all massing materials. This one, though, I think is one of the best. So default mass zone is often a good one to start with. So if you find that material and then duplicate it, that'll usually work the best for your massing materials. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to, just with that material selected, right click, duplicate, and we'll call this, well, I'm going to take the default off and just say mass zone meeting. Alright, so this might be for my meeting rooms. Then I'm going to go to the Appearance tab and just go through the process you would normally to make your material. So right click and show you use for this, either duplicate or replace. Here, duplicate, probably the best option. So it's got a 0 there telling us no other materials are linked to this now. Then I can change the colour, really simply, to something different. Later I'd probably go and tie this into the colours I've used for my area plan. But for now, that'll do. Leaving all the other options there, now I'll go back to graphics and just tick use vendor appearance to pick up the colour from the appearance tab. And that's it. So you can see now really clearly that it's got a different colour, and I can go through and do the same with any of those other mass elements. So if this is another meeting room, I can again select that, and then again over here just choose my new material. I might just repeat that with one more though. So again, using tab to select that element. It's join geometry, but that's okay. You can still get to the material property there. So again, with that material, duplicate, and so this is amenities. And then under appearance, I will just again make sure I duplicate first before I change it, and then choose a different colour. That's it. Okay, so in the end, you might have some views where all the walls are hidden, and you're just showing the massing. So I can hide now. So back in my massing view. Right, so I've got the walls all hidden there already, but I can hide the floors, of course.
So in the massing, you don't show the walls after all?
No, you don't normally just show the massing, yeah. If you want to do it like a diagram or conceptual drawing, yeah. So I'm just hiding all these things by category, so I'm just left with the massing. Nice and clear when you only see those things. But the floor plates can actually be handy there as well to tie in with your levels a bit better. Right, so something like that is all you need.
When you make design, something like form inside the space, I think that's the best way to show it.
Exactly.
And showing it sometimes in Word, but maybe something transparent.
That's right, and that's right. But having it transparent makes it.
Something else.
Yeah, that's right. That's it. It's all about the vertical connections. That's right. That should be plenty of it.